Across our diocese, the generosity of people in parishes is enabling God's mission and having a significant impact on our communities. We want to develop generous giving to allow all our communities to flourish. It isn't easy, but it can be achieved.
Within each of us, I think, there is a safe. The door of that safe seems to get locked early on in our lives, and it doesn't open by itself.
I think the thing that probably stops us being generous is a sense of anxiety. We're worried, particularly, for example, with our money. If I give that money away, may I need it one day? Therefore, I think as Christians, what we have to do is we have to be people who learn to trust a bit more.
We get to know God as we become like him, and God is unutterably generous. And so until we have allowed that generosity of God to hit our lives, to hit our pockets, and to discover what the generosity of God and what it means to be generous, I think we will never grow to be like God, and we will never grow to know God.
It takes the right combination to open a safe, and the safe in us needs more than a set of numbers. It requires a spiritual combination.
The well springs of generosity actually come from vision and from discipleship.
We really get excited about the fact that Jesus inspires us to be recklessly generous, and we don't know in the end what's going to happen to that generosity.
And I think it's when you actually put the spiritual dimension of discipleship at the heart of things, make sure that God and not the bills become centre stage, and all of the resources and the grace that is available to us through those things, that, I think, is where the well springs of generosity come from. It's never going to come from paying the bills.
Giving is our response to God's generosity. It is as much a part of being a Christian as saying our prayers or reading the Bible. It is unmistakably linked to our vision for developing flourishing communities through the wider mission of the Church.
Generous giving in our church has been a real challenge for us. The reason for this is because over the last 2 years we've been involved in creating a health and wellbeing project. That has gone really, really well, but we recognised that unless the group of worshipping Christians were prepared to put their money where their faith is, then we could end up with a project but no live worshipping congregation.
I think the key factors that motivate giving in our church are the simple fact that we do try very hard to include everybody in what we do. There's no sense that we have a little group that does this and a little group that does that. And then others are encouraged and inspired. So I would say that motivation is that deliberate effort to include people.
People can be amazingly willing to pitch in, really. Not with huge amounts of money, because it's not a very rich place, but in terms of the giving of themselves and their time and efforts to help one another. That really is, I think, it's one of the strengths of the culture.
We don't have a great sort of beat up on giving once a year to pay the bills kind of thing. You know, it's part of our DNA. It's part of what we are, part of what we do.
I think we nurture generous giving in our parish by being creative and by being an inclusive community that really enjoys being together, enjoys the worship that we've got together, and being relevant. I think relevant preaching, relevant mission, reaching out to where people are, really scratching where they itch, if you like.
So really our giving is seen as part of mission, not just keeping the show on the road.
We're motivated by a generous God. We serve a God who loves to give.
Let's be honest, there is no set way of developing generosity. Each of us must play a part. What role will you take?
What we asked people to do was to increase their giving, not to start off with 50 people, to increase their giving by 50 pence a week every year for 5 years. So that if people gave 50p in the first year, by the end of the time they're given £2.50 extra to what they were given before.
People did respond, and we ended up with recording an extraordinary 34% increase in our giving. And I think the single biggest reason for that is because of the wider vision that we have for the church.
We've seen an increase generally in our giving and our finances look better. It's hard to say whether it's directly related to the new parish share thing, but I guess there might be something of that. I think it's opened up a sense of generosity rather than resentment.
Because of the generosity of people in our parishes and parishes around the diocese, we've been able to develop God's work in our community.
Keep on growing, keep on going, and thank you very much indeed for all the heroic efforts you make in these tough times to support the ministry that we all need in this diocese.
I'm here at the store at the Prince Bishop's Community Bank where I've been this afternoon, and I think more and more we need to acknowledge across the North East that there is some real generosity. And a lot of that generosity, of course, is within our own parishes. People giving generously to sustain the ministry in their own parishes, to sustain the ministry in parishes that necessarily can't afford their own parish priest. So I simply want to thank you for being generous people, and to thank you for that generosity which is making so much possible right across our diocese.